We're talking with former race car driver Willy T. Ribbs here on One on One. Now, Willie, take me back to your childhood. What made you get into racing?
Well, my dad did it. I was lucky. I mean, I came from a very well-off family that afforded my dad to race as a hobby, and I learned it from him, and I started going to races with him when I was very young, and I had decided at age 9 what my career was going to be, and so apart from traveling with my dad, racing, and then being involved in the family business, and then being up on the ranch with my grandpa, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion where I was going to end up.
So, Willie, fast forward to when you became a professional driver. I know a couple of times you actually had to go back to your family business and drive trucks, and I remember you saying that you really were distraught about it, considering because you wanted to be a professional race car driver. That's what you thought about your entire life. So what was it like for you to stay positive and to make sure that your struggle ended up becoming your reality as a race car driver?
Well, I had no doubt, talent-wise, that if I was behind the wheel, I was going to win races. I didn't expect the struggle to be as difficult as it was. I always felt that if I liked the career that I was involved with, I would like the people as well. And they must be good people if I liked what I was doing. And I realized that wasn't the case. There was tremendous opposition to Willy T. Ribbs when he was coming up the ladder in the sport. Purely not because I wasn't fast, because I was a different color. And but I wasn't. It didn't turn me off. Actually, it made me harder and stronger.
We're talking with Willy T. Ribbs, the first black man to drive a Formula One car. When I say that, Willie, do you view yourself as a pioneer in this sport for other black men who have or women that have tried to do what you've done?
No, I'm no pioneer.
Okay.
I'm a race driver. And Lewis Hamilton, who is the greatest driver on the planet, who just happens to be a black man, and a 6-time world Formula One champion. He doesn't see himself as a pioneer. We're race drivers, and if anyone learned from it, if there's others that want to follow in the footsteps, well, here's the playbook. But my grandpa used to tell me on the ranch, pioneers get arrows in their ass.
Oh, wow.
So I that's not the role I wanted to play. The only role I was concerned with was winning races.
When you look back at your career, what is something you're most fond of or that you remember the most?
The relationships with Paul Newman, and the relationships with Muhammad Ali, and the relationships I had in the sport with people that knew what I was dealing with. They absolutely knew it, and they fought against it just like I did. It wasn't all negative, and I dealt with a lot of negative, but it was the ones who fought with me that I'll remember the most.
And you talk about a lot of you had a lot of negatives in your life because unfortunately people couldn't accept you just because of the color of your skin. But do you still have, or how would you describe how hard it is to not have angst against particular people in society or people in the sport for not allowing you to fulfill your potential as potentially being one of the better race car drivers in the industry?
I haven't forgotten, and I haven't forgiven, and that's going to remain. I'm not going to belabor it, but I'm not going to let him off the hook either, because it was for no reason. Bobby Unser used to say to me, And Bobby, of all the old school drivers, and Bobby's 86 years old, he was the one that had my back. And he said to me, he says, "They're a bunch of dumbasses out there, and it's unnecessary for them. Instead of taking advantage of your talent, they dug their heels in and tried to keep you out." He said, and he says, most of the drivers, if not all, could not have dealt with what you dealt with, and continued.
Willy is the first African-American man to participate in the Indianapolis 500, like we mentioned, in 1991. What do you think the sport needs to do to reach out to minorities, as it's viewed right now as a predominantly white sport?
Well, you can see what Formula One did. Formula One's got Lewis Hamilton, and who is a worldwide superstar, 6-time world champion. Formula One saw, and when I say Formula One, I'm saying Bernie Ecclestone. Bernie Ecclestone was smart enough to see, wow, this is a great market for Formula One. The whole continent of Africa, the whole continent follows Lewis Hamilton, not just the rest of the world in Europe and England and Germany. He saw it, and he took it there. Unless the same thing happens, and Bernie has showed the industry in America the playbook. This is how you do it. You get behind a talented guy, and you make sure it happens. Well, there's still opposition to it. There's some young kid this race in NASCAR named Wallace, no relation to George because he's black, is in the sport, but NASCAR's not doing anything, and IndyCar hasn't done anything either. It's the same. IndyCar looks the same as when I got there back in the 90s.
So again, what do you think they should do, I guess, to get more minorities into the sport? Because it's
you got to invest in it. They've got to, like Ron Dennis did. He took a young kid who was 9 or 10 years old named Lewis Hamilton, and invested into his career and kept bringing him up the ladder in each formula, and groomed him right into Formula One. That's what's got to happen here. You've got to get a talented young man and put the money into him and direct him and get him the right people behind him to get into the big leagues. That's what happened to me.
Yeah. And again, to talk about you a little bit, in 1991, when you qualified on the last, literally in the last possible second to get into the race in the Indianapolis 500, truly, what was going through your head, driving a car that had to go through 2 engines, a lot of stuff was not going your way. What did you exactly do to stay positive and make sure, I'm going to qualify this race no matter what I can do?
Well, actually, we went through 4 engines that month, and you cannot. It's like driving your passenger car. You can't drive with your eyes in the mirror. You got to drive with your eyes in front of you, and what's coming up next. So that's the same mindset that you have as a race driver. What happened an hour ago, even if you crashed your car, you got to get back in that car again and focus right there and be in the moment and think about what you've got to do, not what just happened. So it wasn't that difficult. I knew we were on the ragged edge, and I knew it was tight, but you got to man up and get it handled.
Just a couple more for you. I mean, we've been talking a lot about this documentary and your career, but for those of the listeners listening to this interview who haven't got the chance to watch it, what do you want them to take away before or even after they watch the documentary?
Well, when they watch Uppity, when they get halfway through, they're going to get it, and And we have been batting 1,000 on the responses, and they're coming worldwide. And really, it's not. I can't sort of question or ask what or predict what someone's going to get out of it. But what I have been hearing over and over again is a message that you can't quit, no matter what it is. That it's not about racing; it's about perseverance.